Stormwatch 2024 is sponsored by West Shore Home, Universal Roofing Contracting, and Generator Supercenter.
The fourth busiest season on record.
More than likely what's going to be a Category 4 hurricane at winds of about 130 miles an hour, making landfall somewhere around the Dixie County, Taylor County border.
The Bay Area spared again. Florida only seeing one storm, another eye.
And then all of a sudden it just explodes.
Idalia slamming the Big Bend. This year, major forecasting changes, and your questions answered by Florida's most accurate weather team.
That's a great question.
We're going inside the National Weather Service's Central Command and with the official hurricane hunters, and explaining what your family needs to know to prepare before a storm even forms. This is Stormwatch 2024.
Hey there, I'm ABC Action News Chief Meteorologist Denis Phillips. Welcome to Stormwatch 2024. This year, we're taking the show on the road to stay connected with you. So let's go. So as we get ready for the 2024 hurricane season, it's all about preparation. And one of the great ways to find out what you need are hurricane expos. We're here at the 3rd annual Palm Harbor Hurricane Expo here with Erica. Erica, you have put this together for the last several years. Congratulations, it's getting bigger and bigger every year.
It's phenomenal. I'm so happy we can provide information to the public, absolutely.
And I guess that's my big question. So what is it that the public's really looking to hear more about?
What they need in their hurricane kits, and should they stay or evacuate? That's the two biggest questions I hear.
Throughout the hurricane season, you're going to hear it over and over again. Get your hurricane kit together. And that probably makes you think of a big box with a bunch of supplies in it, when in reality, it means get your home stocked up and prepared to shelter in place, usually without power for several days. And it takes a bit of planning ahead. So whether it's your first hurricane season or your 50th, when it comes to planning and stocking up your home, I've simplified it to the 4 S's: sustenance, safety, sanitation, and sanity. So let's start with sustenance. If the power goes out, and there's a decent chance it will, you're going to want to eat from the fridge and the freezer first, because this is where you're going to lose a lot of money if the food spoils. And by starting your shopping early, you can take advantage of those BOGOs by stocking up on your non-perishables. And to cook your food without any power, you're going to want some type of grill, whether it's propane or charcoal. Make sure you've got extra of either of those, and a manual can opener. Sustenance also includes hydration, and that means water. You want to make sure that you've got gallons of it. 1 gallon per person per day, and count on about 3 days. Safety. We're talking about flashlights, batteries, first aid kits, special medical needs and prescriptions, portable cell phone charger, and if you can, a generator. And of course, make sure it's set up safely outside of your home. That is always one of the biggest hazards during a storm. When it comes to sanitation, of course, we're talking about paper towels, toilet paper, trash bags, cleaning supplies, and if you can, but it's not at the top of the list, a wet dry vac certainly comes in handy. The final S, sanity. And it may sound silly, but when a storm is approaching, it can be very stressful. So you want to make sure that you've got things for your family to do for a couple of days, and you don't want to get cabin fever. So we're talking maybe some games, a deck of cards, yarn, craft supplies, whatever it might be, just to make sure that you're not getting cabin fever. Keep the stress and the cost down by stocking up early and making the most out of the sales. These are supplies that aren't going to go to waste. Shay Ryan, ABC Action News.
Hi there, everyone. I'm meteorologist Greg D. A look ahead into the hurricane season, and the forecast certainly calling for a very busy one. The latest numbers from Colorado State University calling for 23 named storms when the normal is only 14, 11 of those becoming hurricanes and 5 going on to major hurricanes. Of course, it takes a lot to create a tropical system, and it's the ingredients in the Atlantic that forecasters are really watching here carefully. So here's what it takes to build a tropical system. You need water temperatures of 80 degrees or higher. As I'll show you, that is a factor in this season. Converging winds that force air upwards at the surface. This is the intertropical convergence zone. It's that area of showers and thunderstorms just north of the equator that sets up across the Atlantic basin during the summertime months. And then you need moisture. This is something that's not always there. We often tell you about Saharan dust getting in the way at the upper levels, eating away the moisture, preventing storms from forming. And then you need nice, directional shear, low-level shear, that would allow the storm to build vertically. The presence of a La Niña this year may limit this and really make the winds favorable for development. And it's the water temperatures that also may be a very important factor. Take a look at the water temperatures now. They're certainly warm across the Gulf of Mexico, but they're also unusually warm down towards the Atlantic basin. This is the area we look for. It's called the MDR, the main development region. It stretches from the Yucatan across the Caribbean through the Atlantic and to West Africa. This is the zone where tropical waves cross during the hurricane season, then some of them developing into depressions, storms, or even hurricanes. The red color here, that indicates water temperatures that are above where they should be for this time of year. And notice, it's almost the entire region. That tells us there's plenty of juice available already here in May in the Atlantic basin for tropical storms and hurricanes. In fact, some of the numbers indicate the amount of energy available here now may be as high as it typically is in late July or early August. Certainly something we need to watch throughout this upcoming hurricane season.
You've already heard. The 2024 Atlantic hurricane season, it's likely going to be a busy one, with warmer Atlantic waters, lower wind shear as we transition to La Niña, and even lower Saharan dust off of Africa. All of this is setting the stage for a significant number of storms in the Atlantic this season. With all these storms now in the forecast, I want to make sure that you are aware of changes to the National Hurricane Center's forecast cone that will begin in August. I went to the National Weather Service office in Ruskin to discuss these changes with them. Let's revisit the cone you're used to, the one we've been using for years.
Typically, the National Hurricane Center would send out the cone that we are very used to seeing. And the cone would obviously give you the watches and the warnings for the hurricanes and the tropical storms. One of the cones that we had from this particular advisory, we already had some hurricane warnings, we already had some tropical storm warnings, and you can see here, mainly those were showing up along the coast of wherever the watches and warnings were.
New for 2024, the Hurricane Center has made a few key changes that will increase your understanding of impacts outside of the center line of the track, as well as the forecast cone.
The Hurricane Center has this experimental cone that they're going to try this year, and really what that cone is going to do is include the inland watches and warnings for hurricanes and tropical storms. This is a way to focus more on the impacts of the winds instead of just focusing on the coastline.
In addition to these changes, the National Hurricane Center will also now issue watches and warnings during intermediate advisories if needed. Those were previously issued during the full advisory packages at 5 a.m., 11 a.m., 5 p.m., and 11 p.m. The National Hurricane Center will also expand its text products in Spanish. While these changes may not sound like much, the hope is that those who solely focus on the cone, and especially the center line of the cone, will now have a better understanding of impacts based on warnings, not on the storm's path. As we know, storm impacts go well outside of the center and of the forecast cone, even up to several hundred miles.
Even though the cone itself is basically representing where the center of the storm is going, wind impacts are felt way far away from the center of the storm, including inland counties. So it's a better way for people to visualize where the impacts are going to be. So if you're inland Florida, yeah, you don't have the storm surge impacts, but you are going to have wind impacts.
So no matter where you live, inland or at the coast, now is the time to not just be prepared, but to fully understand what the cone means, what watches and warnings mean, and what you need to do to keep you and your family safe.
If we go back to June 2012, Debbie produced a lot of storm surge, killer tornadoes across all of west central southwest Florida. And so the message really from us is make sure you know what you're going to do today before that hurricane comes our way.
Reporting in Tampa, I'm meteorologist Jason Adams, ABC Action News.
You know, you get in an environment like this, there's always a ton of questions, and I'm sure you have a lot of questions as we enter this hurricane season. Check this out. This girl is styling here. Look at the shades. Woo! Well, Dad here has a question, and this is something I think a lot of people have been asking me about as well. So what exactly are you interested in?
Yeah, so just had some questions on El Niño and La Niña years. You know, how does that affect the hurricane outlook, especially here in the Bay Area?
Well, and that's one of the biggest questions because, you know, you get an El Niño like we had last year, that usually kind of squashes the storms. It keeps them from developing, and even more importantly, it keeps them from developing in the Caribbean. And I think, you know, Caribbean storms are our biggest concern because they come up from the south. and then they could get into the Gulf of Mexico. But when there's a La Nina, unfortunately, it kind of opens up the Caribbean. There's less hostile winds, so at that point, we probably see more named storms. But I will tell you, storms in the Caribbean that form, that do come in from the south, they usually want to go north. So most of the time, they're going to be more panhandle west. So hopefully we keep them out of here. It's been 103 years for us.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I would expect a much bigger year with La Nina. Great question. And also something else about the forecasting. You were mentioning something about Saharan dust?
Yeah, just what exactly, how does that affect the storms that come this way?
It's such a great question because, you know, we talk about the predictions of how many storms are going to form, right? And there's going to be a lot of storms. Well, in June and July, Saharan dust comes off of Africa, and that dry, dusty air keeps the storms from developing. So you'll see fewer storms in June and July because of that dust. But in August, that dust starts to lift northward, and that kind of leaves a vacancy for the storms to form. So usually when you hear Saharan dust, that's a good thing for us. It means fewer storms. But once we hit August, it typically goes away, and that's when the hurricane season really cranks up.
Makes sense.
Great question. Thank you very much. How you doing, everybody? Welcome back to Stormwatch 2024. I'm ABC Action News Chief Meteorologist Denis Phillips, and we're at the Palm Harbor Hurricane Expo. You know, we obviously get a ton of questions this time of the year about hurricane season, but we're here with some insurance questions. And Justin, my guess is you get flooded with calls this time of the year about hurricane questions and insurance.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We get a lot of calls this time of the year, just people making sure that their policies are active and in good standing. And that's something that we're always here to help people with, and making sure their coverage is good and accurate and sufficient.
Hurricane Idalia sent a surge of water in the homes of families who live near or on Crystal River.
There was like a couple inches of thick, muddy muck throughout the whole house.
Floodwaters engulfed Linda and Dan Edgington's entire house. What was that like for you to see that?
Oh, it was devastating. It was horrible because our house was so beautiful before.
The couple figured between their flood and homeowner policies, insurance would cover their belongings.
All of the furniture that you see in this room is all new.
It's important to remember hurricanes may cause floods, but property insurance does not cover anything related to rising water. The couple's flood policy did not contain content coverage.
We tried to file a claim with the homeowner's insurance, and we were denied.
So they spent their savings refurnishing their home.
That is a common misconception. They think that everything's covered under the homeowner's policy, and that's not the case.
Karen Seibert, owner of the Seibert Insurance Agency in Tampa, says your homeowner's policy covers wind and water damage that comes from above, not up from the ground. And she's reminding her clients now's the time to review their insurance.
After a storm is not the time that you want to look and see what your policy has coverage-wise.
Also, conduct a home inventory, taking pictures of your possessions, including furniture, clothing, and electronics.
That way, if it is totally destroyed, you can remember what was where and to determine what you're going to ask the insurance company to reimburse you for.
If you ever need to evacuate, take your insurance policy with you. You may have to start the claims process before you return. Just about everything you need to know is laid out on your declaration page. That includes just how much coverage you have for the structure, the contents, and your hurricane deductible.
So if you have a 2% hurricane deductible and your home is insured at $300,000, that means you have a $6,000 hurricane deductible.
It's also important to look over your coverage for things you may have added, like a pool cage or solar panels, which may not be included in your current policy.
A lot of companies, there is no coverage for it if they don't know about it.
And if your vehicle is damaged, check your auto coverage. If you have a comprehensive plan, it will pay for storm damage for things like fallen trees and floods. Policyholders may fare better if a storm strikes this season. A newer state law mandates property insurers must respond to claims within 7 days.
They have 30 days to come out and inspect the property, and within 60 days they should be either getting some money or a denial.
The state insurance hotline helps property owners who run into claim trouble with their insurers. But if you are dealing with a flood claim problem, you'll need to contact FEMA. You'll find all that information at abcactionnews.com. I'm Jackie Calloway, taking action for you.
One of the most important things you need to know before a storm is your evacuation zone. It's different than your flood zone, and you need to know which zone you're in and what to do if a storm threatens the Bay Area. This map shows the counties around the Bay. Now you see all the colors, and they represent different evacuation zones. The reds are evacuation zone A, B is orange, C is yellow, D is green, and E is purple. We have these maps and links to your evacuation zone on our website, abcactionnews.com/hurricane. If you're evacuated, we will see emergency shelters open up across the Bay Area. Each shelter is different, but there are some things you should know before you go to any of them. They don't provide cots, blankets, or food, and you will be responsible for bringing everything you think you're going to need. Also bring water, and plan on 1 gallon per person per day. Bring non-perishable foods and easy-to-prepare items. And also, don't forget medications and personal hygiene products. And don't bring alcohol, illegal drugs, or weapons. Some shelters are pet-friendly for those bringing proof of current rabies vaccines and licenses for dogs and cats. Now, they must be on a leash or in a carrier. And don't forget a crate and food and water for them as well. In this age of social media, we all worry about disinformation. Where are you going to find the most accurate hurricane information? And that's a tough thing to do these days. So we got down to it and sent our Lydia Vasquez to the Poynter Institute to get to the bottom of it.
June is just around the corner, meaning hurricane season is quickly approaching. A reminder to be on alert. Alex Mahadavan, director of MediaWise at the Poynter Institute, says the majority of the time, misinformation begins as soon as a storm pops up.
It's really important to be skeptical of pretty much any post that scares you during a hurricane or the run-up to a tropical storm of any type. So when you get slightly emotional, it's always a cue to check it out.
Every year, hurricane season creeps in, and without a doubt, Mahadavan says fake images and clickbait headlines resurface.
One really fun piece of misinformation that we see every single year when there's a hurricane and lots of flooding, you will see an image of a shark swimming on a freeway. That is not real. It's a photoshopped image, but it crops up every single time.
Mahadavan tells me so many people are getting their information from Facebook or TikTok, where it's summed up in less than a minute with little to no context.
It's also very easy for people to share footage of old disasters or old hurricanes or buildings collapsing in other parts of the world and try to pass it off as something that is happening right now. So it's incredibly misleading.
Mahadavan says the best way to navigate the loads of information being thrown your way this upcoming hurricane season, ask yourself a few questions like, who's the source?
When you see a clip on TikTok or you see a post on Facebook, one, who's behind the information? Are they an expert? Are they a journalist? Is it a local news organization? Or is it some guy who likes to share wild footage of tornadoes? Then you got to be careful. Number two, what's the evidence? Did they cite any sources?
Because there are so many voices competing for clicks and views online, Mahadavan says a little research and relying on trustworthy sources can save your life.
Tuning into your local news station, picking up your local newspaper, you can find out everything you need to know about how to prepare for a storm. Our local governments, they put out press releases, they put out all sorts of information about storm preparedness. And of course, the National Hurricane Center is a great source of information.
In Pinellas County, I'm Lydia Vasquez, ABC Action News.
Stormwatch 2024 continues right now.
Welcome back to Stormwatch 2024. I'm ABC Action News Chief Meteorologist Denis Phillips, and we are at the Palm Harbor Park and Rec Hurricane Expo, 3rd annual, answering a ton of questions. Ladies, by the way, I love the outfits, love them.
Thank you, Denis. We love when you're around.
Well, thank you very much. So what are your questions?
Denis, I was wondering, how many storms are predicted for this year?
It's going to be an active year. I mean, Colorado State's predicted about 23. NOAA has predicted about the same. There's a place out of Pennsylvania predicting 33. But I think we all know it doesn't matter how many storms form. It matters if they impact us, right? I mean, if you have a year with 30 storms that are all in the middle of the ocean, we don't care. But if there's one storm and it impacts us directly, it's a big season for us. So my answer is there's going to be a lot of named storms, and you are at the right place. You're preparing your kit, you're getting ready if that storm impacts us, and let's keep our fingers crossed that it doesn't. You're welcome. We mentioned, I was talking to you a little while ago, you have an interesting question.
Yes, I'm concerned about evacuation. Everything is under construction. There's many new people that are coming into the area, and I feel afraid to evacuate if I need to, that I'm going to get stuck in my car. I live 2 miles from the beach. I'm not in an evacuation zone. What should I do, you think?
That's a great question, and it's one that's really tricky. It depends on every single person, but the bottom line is the expression, you hide from the wind, you run from the water. And one of the biggest concerns for our area is what you said. There are so many people, and if you wait too long, 24 hours or sooner from a major storm coming, you're not going to get out. You're going to be stuck. Folks would rather you stay home as long as you're not in that flood zone. So if you're talking about a Cat 4 or Cat 5, you're going to know it's on the way. You probably want to give yourselves 48 hours, but you're exactly right. If it's 36 hours or less, you need to stay home because you would rather be hunkering down at your house than stuck on the road in your car. That's a great question.
I'm Rebecca Petit at NOAA Aircraft Operations Center in Lakeland, where scientists are using new technology to better understand hurricanes.
NOAA hurricane hunters have been preparing for this hurricane season by conducting maintenance on aircraft and ensuring crews are trained. New research technology is being tested out, including drones like the Altius. It's launched from NOAA's P-3 Hurricane Hunter aircraft into the eye of the hurricane, where conditions are the most chaotic and dangerous.
Where it's unsafe for our aircraft to go. So they're basically flying drop-sons, getting data to help us understand more about hurricane intensity to improve that forecast.
New automated technology that goes into the hurricanes by air, ocean, and below the ocean's surface allow hurricane hunters to safely collect atmospheric and ocean data. All of this critical information will help with hurricane forecasting and ultimately keep residents safe.
The information collected here is sent to the National Hurricane Center so they can accurately predict where and how strong hurricanes will be. I'm Polk County reporter Rebecca Petit, ABC Action News.
I'm Nadine Yanis. You cannot talk hurricane season without talking insurance. With more than 1 million policies in Florida, even the governor has questioned whether Citizens Property Insurance could pay out claims if we were to see a major storm. The company is supposed to be the insurer of last resort and has been depopulating policies for months.
On February 20th, 12:01 a.m., Florida Peninsula Insurance Company assumed full responsibility for claims previously issued by Citizens.
Joanne Baccia emailed us frustrated after getting this letter from Citizens that she was one of the 114,000 people already this year being depopulated.
I get a Dear John letter. Goodbye from Citizens. We're putting you in Florida Peninsula. I have no say on any of it. This is what I'm forced into. So Citizens can push me somewhere else for 20% more. They don't have anybody to answer to for that. I have nothing to say about it.
And her theory on depopulation?
Maybe the goal is for the insurance companies and our government to get rid of the old timers who have been comfortable all these years.
But Citizens says as we approach this hurricane season, they have to depopulate and reduce the risk in the state.
Thoughts on Citizens saying they're trying to reduce their risk? That's why you...
I don't care about that risk. I care about my risk. I care about my home. I can't afford their risks.
Joanne's situation is one many Floridians are also going through, and it's where my conversation with Citizens CEO Tim Serio now comes in. Can Florida's insurer of last resort pay out those claims if a storm hits? It's a question that has now sparked a federal probe by a U.S. Senate committee after Governor DeSantis says that Citizens is, quote, not solvent.
We do have a good story to tell, and we just need to tell it.
It seemed like the governor's comment on Citizens being not solvent stirred some things up a bit.
He's very concerned that if there was a major storm and it came through and Citizens surplus and reinsurance is depleted, that we would have to charge assessments.
And now you have some scrutiny from Congress.
And one of the things that you could very easily foresee is misplaced panic being caused by that letter, because the letter suggested we would not be able to pay claims and that we would seek a federal bailout. That has never happened, even after 04-05 hurricane seasons. There was never a federal bailout sought.
I'm going to ask it in a very pointed way.
Sure.
Would citizens be able to pay out those claims?
Yes, we will always be able to pay claims.
Here's how it would work. If Citizens runs out of money after a major storm, an up to 15% surcharge would hit all Citizens policyholders, and then a 10% assessment would hit all other Floridians, homeowners or not.
An assessment hits every policy.
So we're talking like car,
Car,
even pet policies.
Boat, pet policy maybe, yes. Yeah, it could be pretty significant. And again, that's why, you know, in the past, it has been usually a very small percentage spread out over a period of years, but nobody wants to have to face that.
Sirio says internally, Citizens has merged its surplus accounts. They are now prepared for a 1 in 96-year storm, with another 300,000 policies expected to be depopulated in 2024 so they can continue to reduce their risk. In studio, I'm Nadine Yanis.
Welcome back to Stormwatch 2024. I'm ABC Action News Chief Meteorologist Denis Phillips at the Palm Harbor Hurricane Expo. And Jess, you're putting an expo together in early June. I'm going to be there as well. So this has got to be a busy time for you.
Absolutely. So we like to support the municipalities and their efforts for hurricane season. And we'll have our expo on June 1st at the Tarpon Springs Public Safety Facility.
So what are some of the biggest questions that you get in preparing for hurricane season?
How do I prepare myself and my family? How do I prepare my home, harden my home? Pick up a hurricane guide, the 2024 hurricane guide. It's got all of that information and more on how to stay safe and prepare your home. Or you can download the Ready Pinellas app, and it's got all of this information, but right at your fingertips. Know your plan, stay informed, know your risk.
So it's all about preparation. That's the key to everything, for yourself and also for your home.
I'm Michael Paluska. There are a lot of ways that you can harden your homes for hurricanes, like getting impact-resistant windows. This one's from PGT. We just watched them fire this 9-pound 2x4 right into it.
Clear. Fire.
The 2x4 flies through the air at 34 miles per hour. Slow motion at 240 frames per second stops the action as it takes a dead center aim at the window.
This test is a large missile impact test.
How did this one do?
This one did very well, yep. So we can see that, again, the glass broke, and if you look closely, you can see there's two separate pieces of glass. You can see that some of it's broken in the back and some of it's broken up here. So it kind of similar break patterns, but a little bit, kind of offset on each other.
Fire.
After they smash it, more tests.
Then we have to put this on a wall with a blower behind it. Basically pressurizes the backside of the window, and it'll apply a pressure and release the pressure 4,500 times. So that's simulating the hurricane kind of blowing against the building.
A shingle from a roof just came out of nowhere and just exploded into our window. We didn't need a simulation. During Hurricane Ian, photographer Reed Moeller and I lived through it. We're standing in the middle of the house because the house that we're in is basically surrounded by windows, and it's getting nailed with debris. While in the eye wall, a shingle smashed into a window, a good reminder to stay away from glass and doors.
Once the roof goes off, everything on the inside is going with it.
But strong windows won't matter if you lose the roof. Kyle Mishler is the owner of CAM Roofing and the preferred vendor for Habitat for Humanity of Pinellas and West Pasco counties. He is talking to us about hurricane straps and clips like this.
This is a twist clip. This hurricane clip will go on the wall, and then the wood rafter would get nailed into here. You got 3 nails here. Now, the tensile strength on this is here. After Michael came through in the Panhandle, I saw what it looked like with a non-protected home and a home that had something like this. 2 neighbors, one brand new roof with the newer updated codes at the time. Roof was intact, and then one right next door that was due to replace his roof, completely gone, ripping out all his drywall inside the house. Just pure devastation.
So that's the aluminum hurricane strap that they're talking about. He's now nailing it into the truss, and then he'll wrap it over, making sure that this entire home is secured to the ground.
And it locks it all down.
Every single truss gets a strap.
Our garage doors are rated for hurricane winds, yes.
Jordan Gibson, VP of Construction for Habitat, gave us a tour of a new home.
This is all bolted into the blocking.
Everything is hurricane-proof, from the garage door to the impact-resistant windows, roof, and shutters for added protection.
And this ensures that your door won't blow open.
So the weakest point of a home will fail first and then take the whole home?
Absolutely, every single time.
In 2018, during Hurricane Michael, 5 Habitat for Humanity homes survived the Cat 5 winds as others were ripped apart. The block structures and hurricane roof straps held strong, the roofs shining bright in a field of destruction.
That's exactly why we have it quality controlled.
Because when the next storm hits, because it will, it is better to be prepared for whatever flies your way. In Pinellas County with photojournalist Reed Moeller, Michael Paluska, ABC Action News.
Throughout every storm that threatens our home, Florida's most accurate weather team is here, monitoring and tracking. Our crews go out every storm to keep you informed of the conditions in real time.
Got really bad, stuff started flying around.
Showing you the power of Mother Nature.
You know, looking at hurricane coverage, I think folks who've been watching us for decades, a name that comes up a lot is Don Gramez. Don Gramez, Mr. Hunker Down, was chasing some of the big storms, Charlie and Katrina. And as we've gone through the last couple of years, we've kind of passed the reins on to our new group of storm chasers. Now, Paula Groen, a lot of times you're on the anchor desk, but last year, you had a chance to go hang out firsthand with Adalia, yes?
Yeah, we were out there for a couple of days, and it turned out that we were right in the right spot in the town of Perry, where the eye passed through, literally almost right over us, and so we got to experience that, firsthand.
I know a lot of times over the last 5-6 years, our storm chaser, Mike Paluska. I mean, we've had so many times where, whether it's Tallahassee, whether it's southwestern Florida, you're always pretty much right in the middle of it. And I got to ask you, because a lot of folks ask me this question. So if you're telling us not to go out in the storm, why are you out in the storm? I mean, what's your take on that?
Well, I like the adrenaline. I like to be in the storm. I like to feel the wind. I like the rush. You just see Mother Nature, and you know that at least when I'm out there, I know my wife's watching, I know my family's watching, and I know that other people are watching. So if they see roads getting covered with water, they see the winds, they'll be a little more hesitant, hopefully, to go out into the storm. So we're like, I think Paul just said, human barometers?
Yeah, pretty much, a weather instrument. And then your wife says, knock it off.
I think it's worth noting that even though you guys make it look pretty simple out there, there's a ton of prep to try to stay safe before you actually go on TV. And I think that's worth talking about.
Duct tape and Ziploc bags.
That's where our pros, Tim Jones and Tony Jacobson, our satellite engineer, come in. I mean, they make all these calculated decisions before the storm.
We're kind of protected with this building.
Like angle of the wind, how it'll change, where to park our sat truck. And then they think about the visuals and what they expect it to be. They're making all these things happen, and all I got to do is think about, what am I going to say when I get on live TV?
And whether you're going to duck.
Right, and they're there for that too. We literally hid behind Tim Jones at one point. I almost bit it on live TV because the wind pushed me down.
I remember that. Now, so have you had to move in the middle, or because things are starting to get a little bit out of hand?
So you see the rotation, you know where to go. So we try to put ourselves with 3 walls, where we got a wall, northeast, southwest. We see where it comes in, and then we're always just bouncing from wall to wall. So we know where we can be, but we won't pack up the truck and go because it's too dangerous at that point.
Looking over my shoulder here, you see Michael and you see Paul in the middle of these storms. I mean, literally Cat 3, Cat 4 hurricanes. And I'm kind of curious. So, Michael, you've done both nighttime and daytime storms. How do they differ?
Well, the night times are terrifying because I'm always waiting for a tornado to drop and you can't see it. If you've been in a storm, Paul, you hear like a loud, high-pitched squeal and it lasts for 7-8 hours. You can't get it out of your head, and then you can't see what's flying because of that squeal, and then you see the electrical boxes exploding, lights flickering. I mean, it's kind of unreal at night.
I'm curious, like literally, when you're doing this, are you thinking, what the heck am I doing? Or are you just so focused on trying to bring the story home?
Well, I don't know how Michael feels, but I feel like when you're in the moment, a calm kind of comes over you. When you're there, you have a job to do. It gives you something to focus on. And it's, I don't know, maybe people that jump off a building with a parachute have a similar sort of process where they just sort of take a deep breath and the calm washes over you and you just focus on doing the job. It's the process,
So, storm tracks change, and so, you just don't immediately know where to go. So, I mean, what's the process 24 hours out trying to get around when everybody's trying to evacuate anyway. I mean, it's got to be just mayhem.
But we're lucky because most of the time people are trying to evacuate, and so we're going into the storm. There's a line of people leaving. We're the only car on the road. And then for Irma, we had to go back and forth, so we kept crossing Alligator Alley, and one section was closed, and the storm shifted. And
you have to expect the unexpected. You have to, I always tell myself, just when you think, you know, you're in this zone of comfort in terms of where you're going to be, tell yourself it could change like that. And just when you feel like you've given all you can in terms of your stamina, know that you're going to have to shift to another gear and go that extra 5, 10, 12 hours, however long it's going to take.
But what really struck me was the aftermath after the storm left. Because if you ever want an eye-opening experience, for me, that really gets you. I mean, what was it like for y'all after the storms hit?
Well, that's where the human part of this comes in, because we're there sort of as visitors, unless it's happening in your own hometown, but and you're there and you're talking to people whose homes have been destroyed, and all you can do is be, you know, someone for them to share their story with, and hopefully somehow communicate out there to the world what they need in the days and weeks ahead.
that's the best part. I mean, to tell the stories, because people don't know what happened. So when we're the first ones in and we see that, you know, Mexico Beach got completely wiped out, or, you know, Fort Myers Beach just is gone in your old hometown, these are personal stories. Right. So I think the adrenaline carries us, and it carries us to tell the best story and find the humans, you know, that are there, the humanity in it, and then get help where it needs to be.
Is he okay though, physically?
In that moment, you're not being a journalist or a reporter per se, you're just being a human being, a person who happens to be there in a situation where you hopefully can help them.
And that's why we do it. I mean, we tell stories every day. We interview, people have to tell us the worst parts of their lives, and these storms are, for some people, are the worst part of their lives.
You know, hearing stories like Paul and Michael just shared with you, it brings to mind back in 2005. I chased Hurricane Rita back in Beaumont, Texas, and you know, you see the reporters out there covering the storm, but I'm telling you, the biggest impacts are the ones after the fact, when you see how folks are impacted by these storms. And here at ABC Action News, that's why we try not to deal in hype, not to scare people, because I know you get that everywhere. You go on social media and it's all about scaring people to view. It's all about hype. So we'll never do that here. We're there for you. We depend on that trust that we know you need when a storm approaches us, and I guarantee you we will be there 24/7 when a storm impacts the Bay Area directly. Thanks for joining us on Stormwatch 2024. Stay safe this hurricane season and keep it right here on your ABC Action News station.